Congratulations. You've just woken up in Atlantis barefoot, half naked, and already under spiritual arrest. You're lying on something that might be a dock, or an altar, or a living creature pretending to be stone. Everything is glowing. The water, the sky, the people, even your fingers, which are gently pulsing blue like they've been plugged into some sort of ancient USB port. Around you stand tall, angular figures robed in shimmering gold fabrics that drape like liquid. They're humming, all of them, in different keys. The result is a vibrating harmony that makes your teeth ache and your bladder threaten evacuation. You try to sit up, which earns you a synchronized gasp from the crowd like you just slapped a monk. One of them steps forward taller than the rest, eyes glazed over like frosted glass, arms layered in bangles that jingle with purpose. He leans close enough for you to smell the sea and says something that might be a greeting or a legal charge. You don't respond, because you don't speak Atlantis, and even if you did, your mouth is too dry to form words. They motion for you to stand. You do. Not because you want to, but because something deep in your skull tells you not doing so might trigger whatever counts as capital punishment here. The ground beneath you is warm and breathing. No one acknowledges this. You're escorted through a city that looks like a hallucination designed by an overpaid mystic. The buildings float, the trees whisper. Spheres of translucent liquid hover midair, each one containing some kind of aquatic monk meditating with their eyes rolled back. You try to ask what's happening. A woman with no eyebrows turns to you and emits a sound somewhere between a sigh and a warning. You shut up. Finally, you're led to a circular platform surrounded by floating torches that emit light but no heat. In the center sits a hovering stone table encrusted with crystals pulsing in patterns that definitely feel sentient. You're guided to kneel. A priest steps forward, or at least someone dressed like a priest who just left an avant-garde opera. His entire body is painted silver. His eyes glow faintly purple. He doesn't speak with his mouth. He speaks into your thoughts. Welcome, vessel. You have arrived on the precipice. Then he pours something from a hovering cup directly into your mouth. It tastes like electric mint and copper regret. You feel your stomach knot. Your fingers twitch. Your vision dims. The crowd hums louder. Your name, whatever it was, starts to slip from memory. You're not here to visit. You're here to be rewritten. And the worst part? They seem thrilled about it. As the chanting rises and the incense burns hotter, one thought claws its way up from your dissolving sense of self. You don't belong here. You never did. But they think you do, and tomorrow, they're going to show you what that means one ritual at a time. You wake up on a bed that isn't a bed. It's more like a hovering slab of compressed mist, shaped like a memory foam mattress, and scented like petrichor and superiority. Your mouth is still coated with the metallic aftertaste of whatever ceremonial beverage you were force-fed, and now your breath smells like you chewed on a battery and whispered your sins into a crystal. The room you're in hums not mechanically, but spiritually. The walls breathe in sync with you, or maybe you're breathing in sync with them. Either way, it's not relaxing. There's no window, but somehow the lighting is perfect, as if the sun personally consulted a mood board. You stand up, slowly, knees creaking with the weight of last night's psychic violation. The air is heavy with ozone and something else. Pride, maybe? Ego in gas form? Every breath you take feels like inhaling someone else's resume. You step forward and the floor ripples like water but remains solid underfoot. A doorway opens not because you touch it, but because you intend to. You're starting to understand that nothing here is designed for function. It's all a performance of enlightenment, a theater of ascension where you've been cast without auditioning. A robed attendant appears. He's barefoot, glowing faintly, and smiling in a way that suggests he's either permanently tranquil or just never had to pay rent. He doesn't speak. He simply gestures for you to follow him down a hallway that curves like a nautilus shell and smells like wet stone and lavender delusion. As you walk, your ears ring with the faint hum of distant singing, not voices exactly, but tones. You pass a wall of fluid glass displaying geometric shapes that rearrange themselves whenever you glance at them. You have the distinct feeling that it's watching you back. The attendant leads you into an open chamber, filled with what you assume are Atlantean breakfast foods, floating fruits, gelatinous blue cubes, and a bowl of translucent goop radiating gentle heat. You're encouraged to eat, but nothing looks like it won't try to eat you back. You touch one of the cubes, it vibrates, then purrs. You opt for the fruit, which tastes like mango and disappointment. As you choke it down, a group of Atlantean children walk past you. They glance your way, giggle telepathically, and keep walking. You're now being mocked by toddlers with activated pineal glands. The attendant nods politely and leaves you alone, as if trusting that your spiritual instincts will guide you. They won't. You sit in silence, chewing vibrational jelly and pretending not to panic. You don't know where you are. You don't know what you are. But you know one thing for certain. Even the air here thinks it's better than you, and it's right. You're still trying to figure out how to swallow breakfast without hallucinating when two figures in layered cloaks made of what appears to be folded light approach you with the calm intensity of people who absolutely don't care about your comfort. They speak in overlapping tones that buzz against your teeth, and although you don't understand a word, their message is clear. It's time. You try to ask time for what, but your voice catches like static. One of them gently lifts you to your feet. The other begins tracing symbols on your forehead with a stick that smells like burnt cinnamon and regret. You're led down another corridor wider this time, filled with murals that seem to shimmer and shift the longer you stare at them. One second you're looking at a peaceful ocean scene, and the next it's a depiction of what looks like someone getting vaporized by a ray of light from the heavens. Comforting. The hallway opens into an amphitheater carved into a glowing hillside. The stone pulses beneath your feet, rhythmic and deliberate, like a living heartbeat trying to synchronize with yours. Atlanteans are already gathered, seated in perfect spirals, humming softly like they're warming up for a concert you're not emotionally prepared to attend. A central platform rises in the middle of it all, lit by beams of focused sunlight that don't seem to obey physics. You are led to the center, disrobed again, of course, and anointed with oils that smell like citrus, sandalwood, and old secrets. Someone drops what looks like powdered crystal onto your head, and your scalp immediately begins to tingle with what you assume is either activation or exfoliation. A figure, taller than the rest, cloaked in something that shifts between solid and transparent steps forward and raises a staff made of woven metal and vine. It hums when it moves. He speaks, and the crowd responds in perfect unison, their tones forming chords so beautiful and terrifying, they make your eyes well up for reasons you don't understand. Then silence. Heavy, holy, pressurized silence. You're instructed with a single look to kneel. You do, of course. What else can you do? The high priest places the staff on your shoulder. You expect a knighting. Instead, your brain floods with images. Oceans folding into the sky, stars collapsing into eyes, hands made of flame teaching children how to weep. You lurch forward, gasping, but no one helps you. This is apparently normal. A glowing disc rises behind you, etched with symbols that pulse with every beat of your heart. A voice inside your head whispers something in a language your bones understand, but your brain cannot. You're not participating in a ritual. You are the ritual. The platform sinks slightly. The crowd begins chanting again, this time faster, more urgent. You are not being celebrated. You are being rewritten. The ceremony ends with a blinding flash. When you open your eyes, the crowd is gone. You're alone, except for the symbol now seared into your chest. Congratulations. You've just been reborn. Again. Eventually, your legs stop trembling. You wobble to your feet, still oily, still mostly naked, still vibrating with whatever just happened inside your brain. You've just undergone what appears to be a spiritual rebirth, though it mostly felt like being psychically mugged by a civilization with too many glowing rocks. A corridor opens behind you, and with no better options, you walk. Somewhere along the way, you realize your bladder is about to stage a rebellion. The ceremonial fruit paste, the vibration water, the nervous system reset, all of it has caught up to you. You start looking for something that resembles a bathroom. You see floating altars, meditation chambers, walls that shift like dreamscapes, but nothing remotely resembling plumbing. You stop a passing attendant and try to mime the universal dance of urgency. They smile like someone who's never excreted a day in their life and gesture politely toward a passageway. You follow it with hope. That hope dies quickly. The room they bring you to is circular and glowing like everything else, with a smooth basin in the center, surrounded by coils of pulsing vines. A symbol above the basin rotates slowly in the air, and as you step closer, the vines begin to move. The attendant gestures again, this time more insistently. You look at the basin, then at the vines, then back at the basin. No, you ask, or more accurately, beg for clarification. They nod solemnly and leave you alone. It becomes painfully clear, this is the toilet. Or whatever passes for one in a society that believes shame is a lower vibration. You approach it with the cautious fear usually reserved for wild animals and ticking bombs. The basin begins to emit a soft tone as you near, like it's greeting you or warning the others. You relieve yourself as quickly as humanly possible, the vines twitching around you like sentient bathroom critics. The moment you're done, the basin emits a bright flash and a gentle mist. You don't know if you've just been cleansed or cataloged. Either way, you leave the room with your dignity in critical condition. The hallway feels longer now, and everything echoes louder. You pass other Atlanteans who smile politely, but you can't shake the feeling that they know. Somehow, they all know. You wonder how an advanced civilization mastered telepathy, levitation, and plasma energy, but never invented a locked door. You think about modern toilets, with handles, with privacy, with walls, and you miss them. You miss them with a desperation usually reserved for lost loved ones. You're in Atlantis, the supposed jewel of ancient civilizations, the mythic pinnacle of enlightenment, and you're starting to realize something horrifying. These people may be spiritually evolved. They may be technologically superior. But they're still peeing into singing rocks. And now, so are you. You attempt small talk with one of the attendants. That's your first mistake. You point at a floating mural, a massive depiction of two beings merging into a single geometric explosion, and say something like, "Nice art." What comes out of your mouth is a cracked whisper, laced with doubt and dehydration. The attendant winces like you just sneezed on their soul. You try again. You gesture. You smile. You make the universal face for, "I have no idea what's going on, but I'm trying not to die." They tilt their head, eyes narrowing in what is unmistakably judgment. That's when it hits you. You're not just failing to speak the language, you're offending them. Every word you say, every move you make, every attempt at basic humanity, it's all wrong. You try waving. Too aggressive. You try bowing. Too submissive. You try standing still and smiling. Too weird. Eventually, you just stop trying. You shut your mouth and stare at the ground like a child in timeout. But that doesn't help either. Now you're ignoring people. The Atlanteans walk past you with the serene expression of those who believe themselves too enlightened to slap you, but not too enlightened to mentally exile you to the lower vibrational realms. The children glance at you with the amused detachment of ancient souls trapped in tiny bodies. One of them points at you and giggles in high-frequency tones that reverberate inside your skull. You're not part of the community. You're not even part of the ecosystem. You're a bad vibe with legs. Later, during what appears to be a communal gathering, some kind of circular dance involving levitating stones and synchronized exhalations, you're invited to join. At least you think you're invited. One of the elders gestures toward you with a crystal wand. You step forward, unsure, hopeful, desperate for connection. They open space for you. You step in and immediately ruin the rhythm. You breathe out when they inhale. You spin left when they're still. You reach for the floating stone and knock it into someone's third eye. The music halts. Silence descends like fog. All eyes turn to you, and though no one says a word, the collective psychic judgment hits harder than any scolding your mother ever gave you. You bow. Wrong again. You back away slowly and leave the circle, your ears burning from the inside out. It's not just that you can't speak their language, it's that you're broadcasting an entire aura of incompetence. And in a place where thoughts are louder than speech, your anxiety might as well be screaming. You realize something chilling. It's not that they don't understand you, it's that they do. And they're embarrassed for you. At some point, your body reminds you that you're still, at least biologically, human. You're thirsty, dangerously so. After all the glowing rituals, psychic violations, and communal humiliation, your tongue feels like it's been sanded down and left in the sun. You spot a series of crystalline fountains near the center of a garden-like atrium, each one more majestic than the last. One is shaped like a spiraling conch shell, spitting thin streams of liquid that shimmer like liquid opal. Another floats upside down in midair, pouring in defiance of gravity into a basin shaped like a blooming lotus. You don't care how fancy it looks. You care about hydration. You approach the nearest one, a swirling column of mist condensing into droplets on a hovering stone plate. You cup your hands and lean in, letting the droplets collect on your fingers. The moment the water touches your skin, an attendant materializes from nowhere and gasps like you just kicked a sacred animal. No, they whisper not with their mouth, but directly into your frontal lobe. You recoil, hands shaking, now unsure whether you've committed a social faux pas or invoked a death ritual. You try to explain badly that you're just thirsty. They nod solemnly, like you've admitted to a deep spiritual wound. They guide you gently away from the fountain and toward what you assume will be a designated drinking area. What they lead you to is a chamber filled with humming crystals and mist, where you're asked to lie down and receive hydration through vibrational entrainment. You don't know what that means. You lie down anyway. A glowing orb hovers over your chest. Soft tones flood the room. You're told to breathe deeply. So you do. Nothing happens. Your mouth is still dry. Your lips are still cracked. You open your eyes to ask if this is working, only to find the attendant has already left. You sit up slowly, confused, mildly dizzy, and still parched. It finally dawns on you. The fountains weren't fountains. They were sacred. They were symbolic. They were for calibrating frequencies, or bathing in divine light. Not for putting in your body. Actual water, the kind you swallow and use to not die, is seemingly nowhere. You consider stealing some of the floating mist, but remember the look you got last time and think better of it. Eventually, you stumble into a corner of the temple and find what might be a drinking vessel, a bowl carved from pearl and filled with translucent gel. You take a sip. It tastes like celery and static electricity. Your throat burns, then cools, then burns again. You don't know if it helped. You don't know if it hurt. But you know this. Hydration in Atlantis is not a physical process. It's a ceremony. And if you want actual water, you're going to have to earn it. Or die without it. Eventually, your thirst gives way to hunger, not the casual kind that whines in the background, but the kind that hijacks your nervous system and makes you consider chewing on sacred scrolls. After several hours of wandering through incense-thick air and whispering corridors, you're escorted to what appears to be a communal dining space. The architecture is stunning, as always. Long arched ceilings woven from bioluminescent vines, tables carved from petrified coral, cushions made of vibrating moss that adjusts itself beneath your weight. But the food is a cosmic joke. Platters hover in the air, slowly rotating for aesthetic effect, and on them are offerings that no reasonable stomach would recognize. Translucent blue cubes that jiggle in ways that defy physics. Piles of green sludge that smell like regret and fermented pond water. Slivers of something red and shimmering, sliced so thin they look like edible holograms. You sit cautiously at one of the cushions, hoping to blend in. But the moment you touch a piece of the jiggling cube, it emits a high-pitched chime and dissolves into vapor. A nearby elder nods approvingly. You're not sure if that was a good sign or the beginning of a punishment. You decide to try the green sludge. Big mistake. The moment it hits your tongue, your vision tilts 30 degrees and the floor briefly forgets how to exist. The taste is indescribable, something between wet moss, salt, and the memory of being yelled at as a child. Your throat spasms, your brain fizzes, your eyes tear up involuntarily. Across the table, an Atlantean child giggles, not maliciously, but knowingly, like they too once suffered through their first bite of whatever horror you just consumed. You try to wash it down with the glowing gel water from earlier. It makes it worse. You look around and realize that no one else is really chewing. Most of them seem to be meditating over their food, absorbing it through intention or osmosis or pure delusion. You try meditating too. Nothing happens. You're just hungry and slightly high now. The red slivers are your last hope. They slide down your throat like edible light, and for half a second, you think maybe this is the breakthrough. Maybe this is what they meant by enlightenment. Then the hallucinations begin. The room breathes. The moss beneath you whispers. Your fingernails feel like they're watching you. Someone's third eye makes direct contact with your liver. You slump forward, drooling softly onto your tunic, as your consciousness tries to negotiate terms with whatever molecule just hijacked your bloodstream. You're not eating in Atlantis. You're communing. You're ingesting frequency nourishment, dimensional proteins, and liquid memory clusters. And you hate it. You want a sandwich. You want chewing. You want food that doesn't lecture your soul on the way down. But instead, you sit cross-legged and shivering while a priest places a glowing hand on your shoulder and says, "The digestive awakening has begun." You nod politely, because you're already too far gone to protest. Eventually, your body stabilizes. The hallucinations fade to a dull, rhythmic buzz behind your eyes, like your subconscious is still buffering ancient trauma. You open them to find yourself alone again, the communal eating chamber now eerily silent, the moss cushions perfectly arranged, the vapor platters empty and hovering like they're judging you. You stand. You wobble. You start walking. Determined for the first time since your unwanted arrival. You're going to leave. You don't know where exactly or how, or even what direction out is. But you know one thing with absolute clarity. You can't stay here. Not another second of whispering walls, vibrating rocks, or silent judgment from psychic toddlers. You pass through archways of stone and light, hallways that bend into themselves, doors that open without hinges but close with intent. At first, there's no resistance. The city feels abandoned, or maybe just uninterested. You begin to think you're making progress. The corridors grow wider. The air shifts. You glimpse a patch of sky, real sky, pale and wide and streaked with violet clouds that move too slowly to be natural. You sprint. You actually sprint. Your bare feet slap against the warm stone and your lungs finally feel like they're doing something worthwhile. You reach an archway that opens into what appears to be the edge of the city. Massive cliffs dropping into endless sea, crystalline platforms stretching into open space, and beyond that, nothing. Just water and sky and some sort of shimmering dome in the distance. You keep running. This is it. Escape, freedom, a chance to throw yourself into the ocean, and maybe wash up somewhere that uses forks. Then you hit it. Not physically, not like a wall, but spiritually. Like an invisible force has just wrapped itself around your ribcage and said, no. Your legs freeze mid-stride. Your breath catches. A pressure builds behind your eyes, gentle but absolute, like being stared at by a god with patience and bad news. You turn. A figure stands behind you, tall, robed, eyes glowing the way. A warning light glows on an aircraft that's already mid-crash. He says nothing. He doesn't have to. You're not allowed to leave. Not because you're a prisoner, but because in Atlantis, there is no leaving. There's only realignment. The cliff beneath your feet ripples. The sky flickers. The dome you saw in the distance pulses once and vanishes. You were never close to the edge. There is no edge. The city bends reality around itself like a smug pretzel. The illusion of freedom was just another layer in your ceremonial onboarding. You look down at your own hands. They're glowing now. You didn't ask for this. You didn't choose this. But Atlantis chose you. And if you want to survive, you'd better start acting like you believe that's a good thing. The next morning, or at least what passes for morning in a city with no sun, no clocks, and no clear concept of time, you're woken by a soft chime and a disembodied voice in your skull saying, your function has been aligned. You sit up slowly, body stiff, mouth dry, soul mildly eroded. A new robe has been laid out for you. Gauzy, iridescent, vaguely translucent, in all the wrong places. You put it on, because the alternative is being naked in a society that seems aggressively comfortable with public nudity, and frankly, you've been humiliated enough. An attendant appears in your doorway, the same doorway that wasn't there last night, and gestures for you to follow. You don't ask questions. You've learned. Asking leads to riddles and headaches. You're led to a towering chamber filled with floating rings of metal, spirals of crystal, and giant tuning forks suspended in columns of light. The air buzzes, the floors hum, the walls emit soft pulses like they're breathing. In the center is a massive glowing orb that pulses in rhythm with your heartbeat. You're told again, telepathically, that this is the Harmonic Integration Dome. It sounds impressive. You don't know what it means. The attendant places your hands on a console shaped like a flower made of ice and bone, and suddenly your fingers are moving. Not because you understand the machine, but because it's moving them. You are now a frequency stabilization technician, says the voice in your mind. You will ensure vibrational continuity across the lower quadrants. You nod, slowly, as if that explains anything. It doesn't. A nearby elder hovering cross-legged 2 feet off the ground watches you without blinking. Do not think, they whisper into your thoughts. Thinking distorts the field. You stop thinking immediately. Or, at least, try to. For the next several hours or decades, it's hard to tell you perform tasks that feel like a combination of playing an invisible harp and solving emotional algebra. Sometimes a crystal turns red. Sometimes you hum into a tube made of amethyst and regret. Sometimes you're asked to resonate with the pulse of the Southern Arc. You have no idea what any of it means, but somehow the orb glows brighter when you comply. Occasionally a tone goes flat, and a different technician glares at you like you've personally sabotaged Atlantis' weather system. You whisper an apology, even though you didn't make a sound. The pressure builds. You're not just a guest anymore. You have responsibilities now. Mystical, undefined, and impossibly high-stakes responsibilities. Because here, failure isn't punished with a pink slip. It's punished with recalibration. And from what you've seen, recalibration hurts. You try to remember your old life. Offices, fluorescent lights, microwaved lunches. And for a fleeting moment, you miss it. At least in your old job, you didn't have to worry about destabilizing a planet with your emotional vibrations. It was bound to happen. Maybe it was the pressure. Maybe it was the hallucination still echoing in your spinal cord. Maybe it was the fact that no one ever actually explained what a frequency stabilization technician is. But at some point, somewhere between your fifth accidental hum into the wrong vortex and your third recalibration of the lower harmonic coil, you touch something you shouldn't. Specifically, a hovering crystalline prism that had been pulsing calmly in the corner since you arrived. You didn't mean to touch it. It just sort of drifted closer while you leaned forward, dizzy and underslept. Your hand grazes its surface. It chirps. Then it screams. A high-pitched frequency tears through the chamber like a siren being strangled inside a violin. The hovering orb in the center flickers, then goes dark. The metal rings surrounding the dome begin to spin wildly, their once elegant harmony devolving into mechanical chaos. Lights blink. Alarms chime. Somewhere, a bell tolls that you're pretty sure is reserved for cataclysmic dimensional breaches. The elder who'd been levitating nearby drops to the floor with an audible thud and an expression that can only be described as spiritual horror. You try to back away, but the floor responds by shifting under your feet, sending you stumbling toward the console. The flower-shaped interface you'd been delicately operating earlier now retracts violently, sealing itself like a clam that's seen too much. A panel on the wall opens, and two attendants rush in robes swirling, brows furrowed, eyes already accusing. They don't speak, of course. They don't need to. The entire room already knows. You did this. The orb flickers again, tries to stabilize, and then emits a sound like a choir having a panic attack. One of the attendants places a hand on your shoulder. "You have disturbed the axis," he says, with the solemnity of someone delivering a funeral announcement. "It must be atoned for." You're escorted or dragged, depending on your dignity level, to a side chamber pulsing with pale blue light. The walls are covered in symbols that shift every time you blink, like they're avoiding your comprehension on purpose. A priest enters, carrying a bowl of sand and a feather. You don't know what that means, but your stomach sinks instinctively. You're told to sit. You do. You're told to breathe. You try. Then the ritual begins. There are chants. There is smoke. The feather is waved over your face while the sand is poured onto your knees. You're told your frequency must be untangled. Whatever that means, it hurts. Not physically, spiritually. Like someone is flossing your soul. After what feels like hours, you're finally released. The orb in the dome has been relit. The machinery hums again. Balance, it seems, has been restored. Except for you. You are now a known liability. A cautionary tale. A disruption in the sacred algorithm. And Atlantis has a long memory. They don't let you sleep that night. Not because it's forbidden, but because sleep here is no longer something you do, it's something that does you. The walls hum at frequencies that keep your eyelids twitching. The floor ripples every time you try to get comfortable, and somewhere above your head, an unseen crystal softly pulses like it's counting down to something terrible. At dawn, or what passes for dawn in a place without sunlight, they come for you, not with chains or weapons, but with robes and silence. 2 tall attendants appear at the threshold of your chamber, faces expressionless, eyes glowing faintly. One of them tilts their head in a way that makes your bowels shift. You follow without asking. Because you already know you're in trouble. You broke something important, or sacred, or both, and now they're taking you to the ones who get to decide what happens next. The walk feels endless. You pass corridors you haven't seen before, darker, colder, lined with statues that seem to watch you pass. One of them shifts as you walk by. You pretend you didn't see it. Eventually, you're led into a domed chamber so large it makes your stomach drop. A dozen figures sit in floating chairs arranged in a circle, each one draped in fabrics that seem to resist color, as though dyed in shadow. Their faces are aged but ageless skin like porcelain, eyes like glass, expressions carved from restraint. This is the Council, the real power of Atlantis, and you are not prepared. You're instructed to stand in the center of the chamber, on a glowing circle that softly vibrates beneath your feet. You try to speak, to explain, to apologize, but no words come out. It doesn't matter. They already know. One of them raises a hand, not to silence you, you've already silenced yourself, but to begin the hearing. They don't speak, not aloud. The voice arrives in your head, a layered echo that feels like being submerged in ancient judgment. You have disrupted the harmonic axis. The dome faltered, the field trembled. You nod, swallowing hard. Another elder leans forward. Her voice is colder, more precise. You touched the prism of alignment without clearance. You interfered with the pulse. A third chimes in, his tone softer but somehow worse. Was it ignorance or intention? You stammer something about not knowing, not being told, not understanding the rules. A murmur runs through the circle, not of sympathy, but confirmation. You're not malicious. You're just unfit. The frequency must be preserved, one of them says. Even from itself. There's a pause. A long one. Then a final voice, ancient and slow, curls through your mind like smoke. You are not ready. But readiness is not the threshold. Containment is. Before you can ask what that means, the floor beneath you shifts, the circle spins, the chamber goes dark. You're falling, not physically, metaphysically, through memory, through time, through whatever Atlanteans use in place of gravity. You don't hit anything. You just stop. And when the light returns, you're somewhere else, somewhere worse. Somewhere specifically designed for people like you. You wake up in a room that feels like a mistake. The walls pulse gently with a pinkish glow, and the ceiling is covered in moving diagrams that shift whenever you try to focus on them, like blueprints for technology that hasn't been invented yet and probably shouldn't be. The air smells sterile, but not clean, more like the aftermath of lightning in a sealed laboratory. A door irises open, and in walk 3 beings who can only be described as researchers, although that's a generous term. Their robes are asymmetrical, their heads are partially shaved in geometric patterns, and their eyes glow with the kind of excitement that should never be aimed at another human being. "Welcome to the Chamber of Neuroalchemy," one of them says without moving their mouth. Another walks behind you and starts humming directly into your spine. "We have been observing your oscillations," says the third. You are fascinatingly unstable. You try to sit up, but your body doesn't respond. Not because you're paralyzed, but because the air seems to be holding you down. One of them wheels in a floating tray covered in tools that look part surgical, part musical instrument, and part torture device. You ask what's going on. They ignore you. One places a small, spinning tetrahedron on your chest. It vibrates violently for 3 seconds, then melts into your robe. That will help with interpretation, they say. You don't ask what that means. You don't want to know. Another scientist stands beside you, holding what appears to be a tablet made of stone and plasma. We're trying to decode the friction between your thought form and this timeline, she explains. You're an anomaly, a beautiful, hideous anomaly. You ask if that's good. The answer is a long silence followed by a sentence you'll never forget. We once made a dolphin dream in French. You're next. What follows is a series of experiments, or rituals, or maybe just crimes. They place you in a chair made of vines that respond to your pulse. They attach soft suction discs to your temples and play musical notes that make your teeth itch. They flash images in front of your face faster than you can process, then ask you how you feel about triangles. One of them sprays your hands with something that turns invisible, then tells you not to think about betrayal. You fail. They nod. Predictable, they whisper. Eventually, they bring in a floating orb and ask you to stare at it until it blinks. It doesn't blink. You do. They write something down. You are not a patient. You are not a guest. You are raw data being scraped from the inside out by people who don't believe in boundaries because they replace them with curiosity. As they strap a tiny singing cube to your wrist and call it mood stabilization, one thing becomes very clear. These aren't scientists. These are metaphysical children playing with cosmic matches. And now, you're their favorite toy. At some point, after they've scanned your dreams and measured your blood's compatibility with moonlight, the scientists decide you're ready for the next phase. You ask what the next phase is. They smile not in comfort, but in relief, like they've been waiting for this moment ever since you accidentally broke their resonance field. You are escorted, levitated, really down a hallway lined with glowing columns that hum in sync with your heartbeat. The floor beneath you ripples like liquid glass, and the temperature slowly climbs as if you're being prepared for something warm and irreversible. You arrive at a chamber shaped like a perfect sphere, its walls made entirely of vibrating crystal panels. In the center floats what looks like a pod-part throne, part coffin, part cosmic joke. You're told this is a purification chamber. You will receive the light. You will become less dense. You ask if it's dangerous. The response is a condescending chuckle that doesn't even reach their mouths. The pod opens with a hiss that sounds suspiciously like a sigh of resignation. You climb in. Not because you want to, but because saying no in Atlantis isn't a real option. It's just a delay tactic that ends in more incense and less dignity. As soon as you sit down, the pod seals. A panel closes over your chest, and you're instantly flooded with light. Not warm sunlight, not soothing glow. This is weaponized radiance, a focused, full-spectrum assault that hits every photoreceptor in your body, and several you didn't know you had. You can't close your eyes. You already did. The light is inside your eyelids. It's behind your thoughts. It's whispering things to your spinal cord. You feel your molecules hum. Your bones throb with unspoken equations. Your teeth start to itch. You hear voices in the light, layered and slow, like Gregorian chants melting into whale songs. They're saying your name, or the name you had before Atlantis erased it. You think you scream. You're not sure if it's audible. The light changes color. Now it's violet, now gold, now black somehow. You feel like you're being scrubbed with photons and judged by geometry. When it ends, if it ends, the pod opens without ceremony. You collapse onto the floor, twitching slightly, eyes wide, mouth dry. Your skin glows faintly, like you've been painted with bioluminescence and shame. The scientists nod, impressed. You endured, one says. Mostly, you're not sure what that means. You can't form words anyway. They help you stand and tell you you've been realigned to the solar path. You don't know what that means either. But it sounds like something they say to people who barely made it. As you stumble back to your chamber, legs shaking, pupils still dilated to the size of moons, you realize something terrifying. That wasn't punishment, that was maintenance. Which means this is just the beginning. You figure maybe, just maybe, the only thing worse than being physically obliterated by sacred light is being spiritually alone. So you do what any disoriented, emotionally vaporized, half-glowing newcomer might do in an alien city that has forcibly repurposed your nervous system. You try to make a friend. At first, it's casual. A nod in the corridor, a polite gesture toward a fellow robe-wearer at the nutrient basin, a soft, hesitant hello, whispered with the hope that maybe, finally, someone here will look at you and see something other than a walking vibration hazard. But Atlantis doesn't do casual. It does intention. It does spiritual alignment. It does psychic compatibility protocols. And unfortunately, you're failing all of them. The moment you project friendliness, someone picks it up telepathically, of course, and reroutes it back through the group mind like a joke. You feel it ripple before you even understand what's happening. A soft chuckle, not audible internal, a collective amusement that coils through the air and lands right between your ribs. Someone thinks you're funny, not in a good way. You turn to face them, a young man, maybe your age, sitting in lotus position on a stone platform. His eyes are closed, but his thoughts are wide open, and you can hear them as clearly as if he were whispering into your ear with a smirk. It wants connection. How quaint. You back away. He doesn't move, doesn't open his eyes, doesn't need to. Others start joining in, their internal voices overlapping like a choir of condescending dolphins. The surface one projects longing. It reaches out with questions. Does it not know we already know? You feel your cheeks flush with a heat that has nothing to do with light chambers or vibrational humidity. You try to shut your mind down, push your thoughts inward, hide in some safe psychic basement. But it's too late. They've already accessed the part of you that hoped for human contact. That hoped someone here might say, "Hey, you're doing okay." They didn't. They won't. Atlantis has no small talk, no low-stakes friendship. Only alliances forged through synchronized dreams, shared aura frequencies, and karmic entanglement contracts. You're none of those things. You're a guest in the same way a virus is a guest. And worse? You're transparent. Every insecurity, every awkward attempt at belonging, every mental flinch, it's all broadcasting on frequencies you can't mute. You slink away, emotionally naked, trying not to think. Because here, thinking is public. And the more desperate you are to connect, the more amusing you become to people who transcended desperation several incarnations ago. You don't need friends here. You need armor. And right now, all you've got is a glowing tunic and a growing list of regrets. After being mocked by a hive mind for attempting basic human connection, your body returns to its last remaining instinct, survival. Specifically, the bodily function kind. You're lightheaded. You're overstimulated. You've had at least 2 sips of quantum jelly today and a spoonful of something that vibrated before dissolving into your bloodstream. It's only a matter of time. You need a bathroom. A real one. Not a vibrating chamber, not a purification prism, not a bowl full of spiritual consequences. Just a place to sit, sigh, and quietly beg the universe to give you back your dignity. You wander deeper into the infrastructure, through corridors that don't repeat but seem to rhyme, until at last, tucked behind a curtain of glowing vines, you find a chamber that looks promising. Modest, small, quiet. There's a raised platform, a single orb hovering in one corner, and a shimmering surface that might be a sink or might be bait. You step inside. The orb pulses softly. A voice in your head whispers, "Enter and release." You don't have the strength to ask follow-ups. You sit. You exhale. For the first time in what feels like weeks, your body begins to relax. Then the walls change. They shimmer, collapse inward, and reform as glowing panels. Images appear not on the surface, but in your mind. At first they're confusing. A child's toy, a burning tree, someone laughing at you in a language you've never heard. Then it gets personal. A school hallway, a breakup, a moment you said the wrong thing and thought no one noticed, but they did. You try to stand, but your limbs are heavy. Your memory is unspooling into the chamber, and the orb is humming louder now, like it's feeding on the scenes. You realize, too late, this isn't a bathroom, it's a dream portal. Or, worse, a psychic excavation unit disguised as relief. You've just flushed your most vulnerable moments into the plumbing of Atlantis, and now the walls know you better than you know yourself. A side panel slides open, and an attendant steps in. They don't look shocked. They don't look away. They just nod like a therapist who's seen too much and gestures for you to exit. You do slowly, hollowed out, freshly embarrassed on a metaphysical level. You were just trying to pee. That's it. You didn't ask to revisit your deepest regrets, or relive your 6th grade public speaking disaster in high-fidelity memory surround. But in Atlantis, even elimination is enlightenment. Every function is an opportunity to shed, to purge, to awaken. And if you thought you had anything left that was still private, you don't. The walls are listening, the orbs are watching, and your dreams now belong to the plumbing. You're still recovering from the bathroom betrayal when a series of low chimes ripple through the halls, not loud, but persistent, like a polite emergency. The air thickens with anticipation. Everyone around you begins to move in silent coordination, robes swirling, heads bowed, footsteps synchronized like a sentient school of fish. You try to blend in, but you're the only one without a crystal staff or a confident aura. Someone hands you a sash and a shallow bowl of glowing silver liquid. You ask what's happening. No one answers, but their minds are full of symbols you don't understand, moons, waves, and something that looks suspiciously like a sacrificial raft. You're swept into a procession headed toward the outer perimeter of the city, a series of floating platforms suspended over a stretch of water that reflects the sky too perfectly to be natural. The moon above is massive, uncomfortably so. You realize it's not just full, it's pulsing, like a giant heart ready to burst. You're guided onto a narrow, leaf-shaped raft made of woven crystal threads. It's barely wider than your body. You lie down as instructed, cradling the glowing bowl, and try not to notice that the raft is drifting away from the city without a paddle, a rope, or any sense of concern from the dozens of onlookers now chanting in rhythm. The water beneath you begins to vibrate. At first, it's subtle, tiny ripples echoing the lunar heartbeat. Then the pulses grow stronger, faster, until the raft bounces with each thrum. The bowl in your hands shimmers violently. A voice enters your skull. A line. Absorb. Drown the shadow. You don't know what it means, but your body suddenly feels too heavy to move. The raft tilts. The bowl tips. The silver liquid spills onto your chest and soaks into your robe with a sizzle. You gasp, and the sound disappears into the moonlight like it was never yours. Then the water rises, not all at once, slowly, deliberately, like it's obeying a command given in a forgotten dialect. It climbs over the sides of the raft, laps against your arms, your throat, your mouth. You try to sit up, denied. Something pins you down. Not physically, not completely, just enough. You open your eyes and the moon has split into 3, then 1, then none. You are floating in a sea that no longer reflects light. You are part of a ceremony that doesn't care if you understand it. You are being initiated or erased. It's unclear. Just before your breath gives out, the raft shudders, and the water recedes like a bow pulled back too far. You cough violently, gasping as the silver drains from your lungs. The chanting fades. The raft returns. No one claps. No one smiles. One of the elders helps you stand and says, "The alignment was adequate." That's it. Adequate. You almost drowned under a psycho-spiritual moon while clutching liquid stardust, and the best you get is a performance review. You limp back into the city, soaked and shaking, and realize something darkly profound. Atlantis doesn't care about your survival. It only cares about your frequency. You keep your head down after the moon incident. You walk slower. You think quieter. You avoid reflective surfaces because you're starting to suspect they reflect more than just your face. But the problem is, Atlantis doesn't do privacy. Not with rooms, not with rituals, and certainly not with thoughts. You first notice it in the gardens, or what passes for gardens in a city built by metaphysical architects. The air smells like citrus and memory. The plants shimmer softly when you pass, and every time you try to think something neutral like, "I hope I don't step on this glowing vine," someone across the courtyard chuckles, not at your movements. At your thought, you test it. You think about how much you miss peanut butter. A child 3 meters away snorts. You try again this time, picturing your old roommate from college doing that stupid dance at your birthday. A robed elder looks up and smiles politely, then resumes his meditation. You're not broadcasting thoughts by accident. You're being harvested. Your mind is loud, untrained, unsealed. And in a place where consciousness is the primary medium of communication, your inner life is basically public theater. You start avoiding people altogether, but it doesn't help. Even when you're alone, the walls seem to absorb your thoughts. They shift slightly when you lie to yourself. They glow warmer when you recall a painful memory. You catch a mirror flickering with images you didn't look into. It's not just surveillance. It's spiritual transparency. You can't hide. Not from them, not from yourself. You try building mental walls, picturing concrete, static, fog. It works for maybe 10 seconds. Then someone behind you hums a single note, and everything dissolves. You once thought your privacy was protected by distance, by silence, by politeness. But here, those things don't exist. What exists is resonance. What exists is access. What exists is an ancient culture that evolved beyond secrets and now expects the same of you, no matter how unprepared you are. You miss lying. Not big lies, just the small ones. The harmless social padding like, "I'm fine," or "I'm happy for them," or "that didn't hurt." But here, falsehoods ring like off-key notes in a symphony, and everyone hears them. You pass by a group of initiates deep in trance, and one of them opens one eye just to say, "You're trying too hard. You hadn't spoken, you hadn't moved, but they were right. You were trying too hard to hide, to guard, to be private, and in Atlantis, trying to hide is the loudest thought you can possibly have. You're not invited to the ceremony. You never are. But in Atlantis, invitation is a crude concept. You simply find yourself being guided or pulled by a sudden instinct, or maybe an implanted command masquerading as your own thought. Your legs move before your mind agrees. You follow the pulse in the floor, the hush in the air, the way the torches seem to lean slightly toward a corridor you haven't entered before. At the end of it lies a vast amphitheater, carved into crystal, no seats, just concentric spirals of light embedded into the ground. In the center stands a platform, hovering, spinning slowly, waiting. Around it, robed Atlanteans gather, humming low tones that rearrange the rhythm of your heart. You try to stand back, invisible, just an observer, but there's no such thing here. One of them sees you, then another, then all. No one tells you to leave, which means you're expected to stay. You step into the outer circle, and time shifts. Not metaphorically, actually. You blink, and the sky above the chamber fractures into layers. You see stars moving too quickly, moons blinking in and out like skipped frames in a dream. Someone raises their hands, and the spiral floor pulses once, then twice, and suddenly you are no longer anchored to a single moment. Past and future bleed in around you. The robes of the participants shimmer between centuries. 1 second you're surrounded by ancient figures with staffs of bone and flame. The next they're sleek and metallic, their eyes replaced by orbiting stones. You look down at your own hands and watch them flicker young, then old, then something else entirely. The ceremony isn't for worship, it's for calibration. You are watching the Atlanteans adjust reality. Not in a figurative, energy-healing kind of way, but in the way a composer adjusts a symphony. One beat off, and existence stutters. One note wrong, and an entire age collapses. You stumble backward, eyes wide, trying not to interfere, but interference is a matter of thought here. You try to still your mind, and in doing so, send a ripple. A nearby priest looks directly at you. Their lips do not move. The world pauses. You are pulled forward, not physically, temporally. You feel yourself passing through hours, days, years, entire lifetimes that aren't yours. You see a version of yourself being born in a city of glass, another buried under ice, another walking alone on a desert planet. The ceremony continues around you, unbothered by your existential meltdown. This is Tuesday for them. Eventually, you are dropped back into your body, lungs gasping, knees buckling, mouth dry. A soft hand steadies you. An elder leans in and whispers, "That was a gentle one." You don't ask what the intense ones feel like. You don't want to know. You just sit there, shaking, as time knits itself awkwardly back together around you. Nothing feels stable now. Not memory, not sequence, not self. Atlantis has shown you what lies beneath the clock, and it does not tick. After the time-breaking ceremony leaves you spiritually concussed and emotionally slippery, you're finally granted what you assume will be mercy, a mentor. The announcement comes without warning. A group of translucent robed facilitators surround you in your sleep chamber and declare, "Your guide has arrived." You sit up, blinking, hair stuck to your forehead from residual moon trauma, and ask the only reasonable question, "Guide for what?" They don't answer. They just part, to reveal a figure standing behind them, tall, motionless, draped in fabric that flickers like static across different dimensions. His face is partially obscured, not by shadow, but by something deeper, like your mind refuses to render it fully for fear of seeing something final. He doesn't walk, he appears beside you. 1 second he's across the room, the next he's inspecting your aura like it's a smudged receipt. "I am Oral," he says, voice layered in chords your bones interpret before your ears do. You are behind schedule. You try to speak, but your mouth fills with the taste of iron and memory. He raises a hand, and the sensation passes. He tells you he's been observing your pattern, that your vibrational density is malleable but contaminated, that you must be recalibrated through proximity to source transmission. You ask what that means. He doesn't answer, just points to your feet. You look down. You're floating 3 inches off the ground. You ask if he's a priest, a scientist, a teacher. He chuckles. "Those are human compartments," he replies. "I am a mirror." Which is somehow worse. Over the next several hours or days, Oral guides you through corrective resonance sequences. These involve humming in tones that make your skin itch, walking in spirals that defy gravity, and being stared at until your thoughts involuntarily reorganize themselves. You begin to question your sanity. Oral assures you that sanity is a temporary configuration. He says things like, breathe toward your spine, and untether your memory from the causal field, and expects you to nod like it makes sense. The worst part is it starts to, slowly, painfully. You begin to understand him not because you're learning, but because he's dragging your consciousness up by the roots. Every question you ask is answered with a sensation, not an explanation. Every mistake you make is met not with correction, but with a sudden gust of sound that shakes something loose inside you. One evening or morning or hallucination, you ask him what he is, truly. He turns to you, and for the first time you see his face clearly. It's yours, older, wiser, wounded. He smiles. "We don't mentor others," he says. "We mentor ourselves." Then he vanishes. No flash, no sound, just gone. You stand there alone, unsure if you've just been trained, warned, or folded into a metaphysical origami you'll never unfold. But one thing is clear. In Atlantis, even guidance feels like punishment wearing enlightenment's robe. You thought the worst had passed. You thought after being mentored by a multidimensional reflection of your own confusion, you might be given a break. Something gentle. A nap, maybe. But instead, 2 silent attendants arrive the moment Oral disappears, gesture without expression, and lead you deeper into the city. This time, there are no other initiates, no humming crowds, just you, your trembling feet, and the distinct sense that whatever's coming next has never gone well for anyone. The hallway narrows, the air thickens, the architecture begins to shift into something reactive. The walls no longer reflect light, they absorb it. The ground doesn't echo your steps, it anticipates them. Then, ahead, an arched doorway of black obsidian etched with pulsing sigils unfolds like an invitation you can't decline. The attendants stop. One whispers, "Temple of Sound." Then they're gone. The room beyond is vast and silent in a way that feels aggressive, not quiet, vacant, like the air has been vacuumed of meaning. You step in, the door seals behind you, and then it begins. One note, a single frequency. Low, primal, not from an instrument from the room itself. It hits your chest like a memory of thunder and slowly sinks into your spine. Then another tone joins it higher, sharper, and your thoughts scatter like startled birds. You try to brace yourself, but there's nothing to hold on to. No surfaces, no walls. Just infinite space and increasingly complex harmonics unraveling your perception one octave at a time. Your ears ring, your eyes water, your bones feel porous. You realize the sound isn't surrounding you. It's inside you, shifting your organs into alignment with something older than language. There's a moment brief, horrifying, where you can hear your own blood harmonizing. Then the room begins to pulse. Not physically, temporally. Time compresses and expands with every new frequency. You are a child. You are ancient. You are forgetting your name. You open your mouth to scream and hear a perfect note emerge, clear, crystalline, inhuman. The room approves. A hum builds in the chamber. It crescendos until your teeth buzz, and your vision fractures into color and vibration. You collapse, unable to tell if you're weeping or evaporating. Then silence, deafening, sacred, absolute. You lie still for what could be seconds or lifetimes. When your hearing returns, the first thing you register is your own heartbeat, finally yours again. Slower, steadier, but unmistakably altered. The obsidian doorway reopens. No one is there to guide you out. You walk, legs jelly, brain scrambled. Outside, a different attendant greets you with a neutral expression and says, "You resonate more clearly now." You nod. You want to ask what the purpose was, what it accomplished, but you already know the answer. Atlantis doesn't explain. Atlantis transforms, whether you're ready or not. You don't know how long it's been since the Temple of Sound. Time moves differently now, not slower or faster, just sideways. Days fold into each other like wet paper. You no longer sleep as much as dissolve occasionally, then reconstitute somewhere else. But eventually, someone finds you. A pale-robed woman with a face that seems sculpted from calm itself. She doesn't speak, just extends a hand and places a tiny geometric sigil into your palm, sharp-edged, pulsing with a faint warmth. "Your name," she says, and for a moment, you wonder if she's mistaken. You already have a name. You've had one your whole life. It's printed on government IDs, whispered by old friends, etched onto coffee cups in awkward marker handwriting. But she's not giving you that name. She's giving you this name. It vibrates the second your fingers curl around it. Not audibly cellularly. It feels like being renamed from the inside. You try to pronounce it. You can't. Your mouth doesn't form those shapes. Your throat isn't built for those frequencies. It's not for speaking, she explains. It's for remembering. You want to ask remembering what, but the question falls apart in your mind before it reaches your lips. The sigil dissolves into your skin like it always belonged there. You feel lightheaded, rootless, seen. It's not a name in the traditional sense, not a label. Not an identity. It's a frequency signature, a pattern that aligns you with a specific strand of Atlantis's great unfolding. You are no longer you. Or rather, you are no longer the you who arrived here terrified, damp, and spiritually flammable. You are now Tsari, or Von Alem, or third wave of the Sapphire Spiral, depending on which elder you ask. They all agree, however, that your old name is obsolete. That identity was a survival costume, says one. This is your essence. You try to argue, to explain that names carry meaning, history, memory. One of them cuts you off. Exactly, they say. That's why we replaced yours. You leave the naming chamber in a daze, head buzzing with syllables you can't repeat. The other initiates regard you differently now, not with warmth, but with acknowledgement. Like a file has been updated, a checkbox ticked. You've been cataloged, filed, tagged in the collective awareness. You miss your old name. It wasn't sacred, it didn't vibrate. but it was yours. It came with stories, mistakes. That time, someone yelled it from across the street, and you smiled before you even turned around. But Atlantis doesn't care about stories. It cares about alignment. And so, with a sigil etched into your soul and a new designation pulsing behind your eyes, you march back into a life that no longer recognizes the person you were and no longer allows you to be anything less than who they now say you are. You weren't supposed to be there. It was a detour, a wrong turn during yet another unmarked corridor walk, one of those Atlantean non-paths that rearranges behind you. You thought it might be a meditation chamber, maybe a place to sit and pretend your new name doesn't feel like someone else's skin. But when the heavy woven curtain of liquid light parts, what you see is not peace. It's arrival. A group of Atlanteans stands in a wide circle around a glowing basin of gelatinous blue mist. In the center, hovering midair, is a pregnant figure, genderless, serene, eyes closed, but clearly not unconscious. Their body glows with shifting constellations, like galaxies are forming just beneath the surface of their skin. No one is speaking, but everyone is communicating. You feel it hit your mind like a wave of warmth laced with static. Thoughts, emotions, instructions, encouragement, warnings. A chorus of intent being funneled into the figure at the center, whose body begins to ripple, not contract, ripple in soft waves of undulating light. This isn't childbirth. This is manifestation. You want to look away. You should. But something holds you there, not fear, not awe. Compulsion. The atmosphere thickens. You start to taste sound. The hum in the room becomes physical. Your bones vibrate. Your teeth ache. And then, with a sudden flicker of light and a burst of absolute silence, the child appears. No pushing, no blood. Just emergence. One moment there was a space. The next, there's a bioluminescent infant cradled midair in a pocket of sound. It doesn't cry, it radiates. Pulses of color shoot through its translucent skin like lightning through fog. Its eyes already open scan the circle of figures before locking onto you. And in that instant, you feel seen in a way that bypasses identity and drills straight into essence. The baby projects something at you, not language, not image, a knowing. A flash of recognition that makes your knees weaken. You stumble back, breath caught in your throat, because this thing, this newborn glowing being just read you, all of you, and it didn't blink. One of the elders turns toward you, finally acknowledging your presence. "They chose to let you witness," she says, as though that explains why your soul feels like it's been cryo-scanned. You nod, unable to speak, heart pounding against ribs that now feel metaphorical. As the newborn is wrapped in bands of light and passed from palm to palm like a sacred song, you slink out the chamber in stunned silence. You thought birth was about biology, about blood and screams and umbilical cords. But in Atlantis, it's about consciousness, density to light, form to meaning, and you just witnessed something that proves you are far too dense for this place, and far too awake to forget what you've seen. You're summoned without warning. Again. A low-frequency chime vibrates the back of your skull, and you instinctively rise from your moss-lined floor mat, already knowing resistance is a waste of both breath and dignity. Two attendants greet you outside your chamber. They're smiling, which in Atlantis is rarely good. Group synthesis, one says, like it's a spa appointment. You're guided or herded into a spherical chamber where the air hangs heavy with charged potential. The walls are matte black, absorbing all reflection. Seated inside the chamber are 11 other initiates, each already in position, legs crossed, eyes closed, hands resting on thighs with palms open. You recognize none of them. They recognize you instantly. One nods before closing their eyes again, not in greeting, but in warning. You take the final spot in the circle. As soon as you sit, the door seals. A crystal embedded in the ceiling emits a soft tone, and just like that, the group begins. You don't know how. There's no instruction, no countdown, no verbal cue. You simply feel your mind begin to stretch gently at first, like waking from a nap, then violently. Your thoughts no longer belong to you. They're leaking outward, interlacing with others, becoming threads in a psychic braid you didn't consent to weave. It's overwhelming. You feel 11 personalities bleeding into your mental space. Confidence, grief, arrogance, terror, apathy, hunger, desire. Some of them whisper, some scream. One of them thinks exclusively in geometric equations that make your vision blur. You try to center yourself. You try to hold on to one small, private memory. A beach, a dog, your favorite cereal. It's ripped away and dissected by the group in seconds. Someone laughs. Someone cries. You can't tell who. Emotions start looping. Someone's guilt fuses with someone else's pride. You feel both, then neither, then nausea. You try to pull back. You can't. One of them notices. The foreigner is fragmenting. A voice says not aloud, but inside, clear and cruel. You recognize the tone. It's the same one that mocked you in your first week here. Then come the judgments, raw and unfiltered. They don't think you belong. They don't trust your frequency. One of them thinks you're polluting the blend. Another calls you a karmic echo. You want to scream, but the scream becomes data. You want to shut down, but even your shutdown impulse gets shared, analyzed, and returned to you magnified. There is no privacy, no boundaries, just exposure. And then something shatters not in the room, but inside you. A psychic tendon snaps. You feel yourself go quiet, not calm blank. The circle registers it instantly. They pause. You've broken the link. Not escaped broken. You've dropped out of the collective consciousness like a stone falling out of a song. The crystal above dims. The room exhales. One by one, they open their eyes. No one says anything, but every gaze carries the same message. You failed. You stand, stagger, really. Someone helps you up. You weren't ready, they say. You nod. Because you weren't. You may never be. Atlantis doesn't force understanding. It assumes it. And when your mind can't keep up, it leaves you behind quietly, thoroughly, and without pity. You wake up in a different room than the one you passed out in. Again. This one is colder, not in temperature, but in presence. It's silent, and not in the usual Atlantean way. This is archival silence. The kind of silence that hums beneath centuries of stored thought. A robed figure waits by the entrance. They don't greet you. They just nod toward a corridor carved from translucent stone that glows faintly with pulsing threads of color. You will walk, they say. The memories will find you. You don't ask questions anymore. You've learned. You walk. And with every step, the corridor responds. Scenes begin to flicker inside the crystal walls, not projections, but impressions, echoes of lives once lived. You see a child learning to levitate fruit using only their breath. A woman floating underwater in a trance so deep her heartbeat is sinking with a wail. A group of elders arguing telepathically while their mouths smile in perfect unison. And then you see something that shouldn't be here. A man, pale-skinned, shaved head, cloaked in something more modern, synthetic fabric, not flowing robes. He's in a room full of Atlanteans and looks just as confused as you remember feeling on day one. He says something in English. No one replies. He panics, tries to run. collapses mid-sprint like he just hit a psychic wall. The vision fades. Another appears. A woman now darker skin, braided hair, wide-eyed and furious. She's yelling at an elder, fists clenched. You can't hear her words, but you feel her pain, isolation, defiance, hunger for control. A need to belong wrapped in the knowledge that she never truly will. The elder reaches forward and presses 2 fingers to her forehead. She goes silent. So do the walls. You stumble forward, heart racing, pulse pounding, more flashes, more outsiders, a boy, an old man, a teenage girl, all different races, backgrounds, languages, all lost in a city that refuses to explain itself, all slowly, inevitably, reshaped or erased. You reach the end of the corridor, shaking. The attendant is waiting. "You said I was chosen," you whisper. "You made it sound like I was special." The figure's expression doesn't change. "You were," they reply. "So were they." You stare into the crystal behind them and see one final memory. A figure, unrecognizable, fully Atlantean, now staring back with eyes that once looked like yours. You ask what happened to them. The attendant says nothing. They simply turn and walk away. You're not the first. You won't be the last. And now, you carry more than just your own confusion. You carry the weight of everyone who came before you, everyone who thought they were chosen, before Atlantis decided what they'd actually become. You're given a full day to yourself. No rituals, no group telepathy, no spectral guides whispering riddles into your pineal gland. Just solitude, which, in Atlantis, is suspicious. You sit by a stream that flows upward. The sky above flickers between sunset and pre-dawn. Somewhere behind you, a choir hums a note that never ends. It should be peaceful, but your stomach knots the way it did right before your high school graduation when freedom felt more like a trap than a gift. As expected, your quiet doesn't last. At dusk, or whatever Atlantean approximation of dusk this is, you're summoned to a chamber you've never seen before. It's circular, silent, lit by a single, hovering flame that casts no shadow. In the center stands an elder you vaguely recognize not by face, but by imprint. Someone important. Someone who has seen the full blueprint of you. They gesture for you to approach. "It is time," they say. You ask for what, and they tilt their head like you've missed something obvious. "To choose," they say. You've been aligned, observed, calibrated. Now we offer what few are ever offered. Volition. 2 doors appear behind them. You didn't see them before. They didn't exist before. One is etched with a spiral turning inward. The other radiates a soft outward pulse, like breath leaving the body. The elder explains, "One path keeps you here. In Atlantis, you'll be initiated fully, given a function, an anchor. You'll never return to your old world because you'll no longer be a fit for it. The other path, well, it doesn't return you, but it removes you. You'll wake up somewhere else in another life, another identity, another layer of the great forgetting. Your memories of Atlantis will dissolve. You'll think they were dreams, acid trips, fictions. And the city will continue without you." You ask if this is a test? They nod, then shake their head. "All choices are tests," they say. But not all tests are choices. You stand between the doors for what feels like hours, trying to listen to your intuition, but your intuition doesn't work here. It's been scrambled, rewired, overwritten with tones and symbols you barely understand. You want to go home, but you don't know what that means anymore. You want to stay, but staying means letting go of every version of yourself that once knew what wanting even was. You take a step forward, the elder watches. The doors don't move, the flame doesn't flicker. Atlantis doesn't push, it doesn't pull, it just waits. And you realize the cruelest part. This is your decision, and no matter which door you choose, you're never walking out the same. After the non-choice you just made or pretended to make, you're left alone again. But not really. Nothing in Atlantis is ever just you. The city has a way of folding in on your thoughts, amplifying your questions until they ripple outward and boomerang back as bizarre answers. You sit by a pool that reflects nothing, hoping to process, hoping to decompress. Instead, the water stirs and begins to shimmer with light. Not Atlantean light, LED light. You peer in and see a vision, or maybe a prank, a living hallucination projected from your own fractured psyche. It's Earth, or what Earth thinks Atlantis is. The first image, a scuba diver in a History Channel reenactment, dramatically swirling near some coral and narrating, "Could this be the lost temple of Poseidon?" You nearly choke. The next, a children's book illustration showing Atlanteans riding dolphins like taxis, grinning with perfect teeth and surfboard tans. They're wearing togas. One is holding a trident made of gold and bad decisions. The scene shifts again. Now, it's a YouTube thumbnail. "Real Atlantis found," with a red circle drawn around a suspicious rock and a shocked man's face photoshopped in the corner. You want to laugh. You really do. But it hurts. Because you realize this is what they think you're inside of. A myth, a cartoon, a ruin. No one suspects that Atlantis isn't a city of golden statues and bubble domes. It's a consciousness system. A place that doesn't exist in the way GPS or tectonic plates define places. A living ritual wearing the skin of architecture. Meanwhile, the surface projects nonsense onto it. Scuba gear, crystal pyramids, alien engineers, and mermaid bloodlines. The pool shows more. Influencers in wetsuits, spiritual grifters selling Atlantean DNA activation kits, and a CGI simulation where the entire city rises from the ocean in triumphant slow motion while violins swell in the background. None of it is right. All of it is hilarious and tragic. You realize Atlantis has no interest in correcting the record. Why would it? If the surface knew the truth, the real truth, it wouldn't be enchanted. It would be terrified, because Atlantis isn't a lost city. It's a test of resonance. And the people who get close enough to even touch the idea of it, they don't need facts. They need readiness. The pool goes still. The vision fades. You sit there for a while, blinking, chewing on the quiet. And for the first time in days or lifetimes, you actually laugh. Not because anything is funny, but because you now understand. The surface wants Atlantis to be a myth. It needs it to be, because the alternative is too strange, too vast, and far too real to survive. It begins with silence, not the reverent, glowing silence you've come to associate with Atlantean ritual. This one is heavy, dull, like the city is holding its breath and waiting to exhale something it can't name. You're guided gently but firmly to a small chamber with obsidian walls and a ceiling that pulses like a heartbeat under glass. You don't know who died. No one tells you. You weren't close to anyone here. Not in the way that closeness used to mean, yet you're expected to attend. You're handed a single thread of silver light and told, "Hold this. Let it remember you. You do as instructed." The thread is warm, vibrating gently in your palm, like a wire running from your fingers into some deeper system of memory you didn't realize you were plugged into. You take your place in the circle, 12 of you, robes fluttering with some breeze that doesn't physically exist. In the center, there's no body, no casket, just a floating orb of softly pulsing light, and within it, a shape that flickers in and out like a soul trying to remember how to stand still. The ceremony begins. No one speaks. No one weeps. Instead, the room slowly fills with sounds that don't come from mouths, harmonics of grief. Tones that rise from the soles of your feet and coil up your spine until your entire nervous system becomes a eulogy. You feel it in your gut first, loss. Then in your chest, reverence. Then in your head, release. But what startles you most is the growing sense that the grief isn't coming from them, it's coming from you. You're mourning something. Someone. Yourself? The thought slides through you like a whisper. This death is a mirror. You begin to see flashes not of the person who passed, but of versions of you that no longer exist. The first day you, terrified and loud. The judgmental you, resisting everything. The proud you, thinking you could master this place. Each one rises and dissolves in the orb like ghosts of egos unneeded. One of the elders places a hand on your shoulder. "They've passed," he says. "Now let them go." You nod, and though you don't know who exactly you're mourning, you cry anyway quietly, without drama. The kind of tears that come when your identity finally accepts it's been evicted. The orb pulses once more, then fades. The silver thread in your hand disintegrates into sparks that vanish before they hit the floor. The room slowly empties, but you remain seated, hollow in a way that feels sacred. You don't feel lighter, you feel stripped. And that's when it hits you. Maybe someone did die. Maybe it was you. Just not the version, still breathing. They find you the next morning, or whatever approximation of morning. Atlantis permits standing in the courtyard where time folds like origami. You're not trying to hide anymore. There's nowhere to hide. You're just waiting. For what? You don't know. A resolution? An ending? A reboot? Instead, two initiates silently appear at your sides and guide you without a word through a tunnel of translucent stone that darkens as you walk. The city gets quieter the deeper you go, until even your breath feels disruptive. Finally, you emerge onto a narrow ledge overlooking an impossible expanse, the edge of Atlantis, and beyond it, nothing. Not ocean, not space, not darkness. Just unformed potential, stretching endlessly in every direction. It's not a wall. It's the end of what has been imagined, and it's waiting to be imagined again. A figure stands at the edge, robed, still, ancient in the way glaciers are ancient. They don't turn to greet you. They just speak. "Why did you come?" The question cuts through you. Not like an interrogation, more like a tuning fork, struck and left to ring through your memory. You start to answer to explain that you were pulled, chosen, marked, that it wasn't your choice. But even as you speak, the words feel fraudulent. The figure nods, sensing your hesitation. "That is not why," they say. "That is how." You fall silent, because you don't know why. Not really. Not in the way Atlantis demands to be answered. You thought you were seeking truth, wisdom, escape, maybe even glory. But none of those things explain the ache that led you here. The dream that kept showing up, the strange sense of unfinishedness that followed you everywhere back home. The figure finally turns, and you see their face, or rather, its absence. A shimmering blur, like the idea of a face too old to maintain a single form. They gesture toward the edge. The city ends here. What you carry does not. You peer out again, into the void. And for the first time, you don't flinch. Because something in you recognizes it. The pull. The calling. The terrifying invitation to step into a space that isn't yet defined. The real answer, the figure says, is not why you came. It's why you stayed. And suddenly you know you stayed because Atlantis didn't offer escape. It offered confrontation. Not with gods, or beings, or alien technology, but with yourself. Every buried pattern, every soft lie, every spiritual bypass you built to avoid the truth of your own density. You didn't come here to ascend. You came here because you ran out of places to hide. The invitation comes not as a command, but as a permission. A gentle thought seeded into your awareness by something or someone you can no longer distinguish from the city itself. You may go. 2 words. No ceremony, no explanation, just release. At first, you think it's a trick. Another metaphor. Another test. But it isn't. This is real. Whatever real means here. You've reached the outermost ring of your journey, and the path backward or outward is now technically available. You may return, says a voice, to your world, to your density, to your forgetting. You nod instinctively, then pause. Because that last part, that's the catch. Forgetting. If you choose to leave, you won't take Atlantis with you. Not really. You'll lose the clarity, the resonance, the knowing. You'll forget the faces, the rituals, the fear, the beauty, the unbearable transparency of this place. It'll fade into myth, a dream, a fever you won't be able to explain without sounding unwell. You'll still feel changed, of course, but not in a way you can describe. People will ask where you've been, and you'll stammer. You'll call it a retreat or a break or some weird time off, and they'll nod, unconvinced but polite. And worst of all, part of you will stop believing it happened. You'll doubt your own transformation. Wonder if you made it all up. The idea horrifies you, but the alternative? Staying? Becoming one of them? Giving up your last shred of groundedness in exchange for perfect alignment with something you still don't understand? That's terrifying too. You ask if there's a middle path, some way to remember without staying, a way to return and carry Atlantis with you. The response is a soft chuckle that echoes in every direction. If that were possible, the voice says, everyone would do it. You are taken to a chamber with 2 exits, one glowing with warmth and echoes of a life you once lived, the other fading into the soft hum of Atlantean permanence. You stand between them, trembling, not with fear, with responsibility. Because this isn't just a choice about location, it's a choice about frequency. You can't unsee what you've seen, but you can forget. And that, you realize, might be the most merciful and most brutal truth of all. Atlantis won't stop you. It never did. The city simply watches, records, resonates, and lets you decide what kind of reality you're willing to live in and what price you're willing to pay to remember it. You choose the door, the one that leads away, not because you're ready, but because you know staying would mean losing the final thread of who you were. You step through, no farewell, no ceremony, just a faint chime, a tone you now recognize as both blessing and release. You expect a flash, a pull, a cinematic rupture of dimensions, but what you feel instead is disappointment. Leaving Atlantis isn't dramatic, it's quiet. You wake up in your own bed. Same sheets, same dust in the windowsill. Your phone is dead. Your fridge hums like it always did. No time has passed. Or maybe too much has. You stumble into your bathroom, stare at your face. It's the same, but it isn't. Your eyes look like they've seen something they can't describe and know better than to try. You walk outside. The world is duller, softer, Too linear. People smile, traffic moves, the sky behaves. You try to remember the ceremonies, the sounds, the faces, and all you're left with is fragments, impressions, flashes of light you can't name. You tell yourself it was a dream. Then, later, you tell yourself it wasn't. The memory drifts between those poles for weeks. You keep expecting something to break, a glitch in the clouds, a doorway in your hallway, a humming tone in your pillow. Nothing happens until one night, in the half-sleep between thoughts and dreams, you hear a voice. Not loud, not external, just there. You left, it says, but you're still tuned in. You sit up, heart pounding. You feel the pull not back but through, like part of you never actually came home. And you realize, Atlantis never needed to keep your body. It only needed your resonance. The version of you that cracked, dissolved, and reassembled in sound and symbol, that version stayed. Atlantis doesn't lose people. It splits them. What returned is a proxy, a strand. The rest? Still there, in that city of light and cruelty, humming in alignment, watching you live a life you no longer fully recognize. And sometimes, when you're quiet enough, you'll feel it. A pulse in your chest that doesn't match your heartbeat. A whisper behind your dreams. A mirror that flickers when no one's watching. You thought you escaped, but Atlantis was never a place you escaped from. It was a place that marked you. You left, but Atlantis didn't let go. And deep down, you don't want it to.